Hi, everybody. Brianna Whitney here, host of True Crime AZ Live. Thank you so much for joining me for the show this week. There is so much to talk about, and I'm excited for the show. It's the first time we've ever had two live guests. We're going to get to them for two different cases. I also interviewed two former U.S. attorneys about the big Luigi Mangione case. I'm sure a lot of people watching this know that case. We're going to talk about it all, but of course, all eyes have been on the Charlie Kirk assassination and the arrest and the details on the suspected shooter, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. That is where we begin tonight in our first segment, the big case tonight. Okay, so we learned so much in this last week about what unfolded last week with Charlie Kirk. And obviously, there's been such tense moments online, on social media, and just with everything that's unfolded in the aftermath of this. But from a true crime perspective, I've really been focusing on the shooter himself and what the Utah County Attorney and the FBI has released in terms of details. So here's what we know so far on Tyler Robinson. He is facing aggravated murder, which is death penalty eligible in Utah. Interestingly enough, Utah, one of the only states that still has the firing squad. So he could die by firing squad if convicted and sentenced to death. We also know that his DNA was found on multiple things at the crime scene. We're talking the weapon, the casings, and even a screwdriver that was left on the roof there where you saw that video of him running to get away. This was an interesting investigation. We know for the first couple days that it would be like the FBI would release information. Hey, we have a person of interest. We have somebody in custody. They're not the shooter. Now they're let go. And so there was definitely this tension there in the first couple days where people really didn't know what was going on and who was responsible for this. And they put out surveillance photos, surveillance video and surveillance photos from that video saying, hey, do you recognize this person? And it was Tyler Robinson who was in those pictures. Now, who recognized him? His own parents. And that's something that we learned from the press conference earlier, and then the court documents. Actually, both his dad and his mom recognized him and thought, that looks weird. That looks like our son. They confirmed their suspicions with each other, and then they went and confronted Tyler. Tyler then told them, according to court documents, that he was going to take his own life, but they convinced him to turn himself into a sheriff's deputy friend that lived nearby. What you're seeing on your screen right now are text messages that come into play and are a huge part of this case, something I don't think we expected to get in this case. I'm going to take you through these text messages because when the Utah County Attorney went through them, it really detailed what Tyler allegedly did in the hours and even minutes after he reportedly shot and killed Charlie Kirk. So let's go through them kind of one by one because I think this is now going to be the crux of the case. So allegedly, Tyler confessed to this crime to his roommate. In the county attorney's press conference, they said that Tyler was dating his roommate who was transitioning from a man to a woman. So right then and there, we could see that he's part of the LGBTQ community, and we know that Charlie Kirk has conservative views. So that kind of came into play pretty quickly. He then, according to the court documents, texted his roommate and said, drop everything, look at the note I left under the keyboard. That note said, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. So the roommate starts texting back and is like, what? You're joking, right? Like, this can't be you. Tyler says, I did it. I'm sorry. You can see it here on your screen. You weren't the one who did it, right? I'm sorry. So they go through some of these text messages and then the roommate asks Tyler, why'd you do this? And he said, pointing to Charlie Kirk, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. Well, the roommate then asked, how long did he plan this? How long had he been planning this? He said a bit over a week, I believe. And these text messages go back and forth. He starts, though, telling his roommate how he needs to go get the rifle that he left in the woods, that he was concerned about this rifle. He had meant to go back and get it. But then, as everything obviously unfolded, police surrounded the area. They cordoned it off and he couldn't get back to get it. He was worried that they would find that would have his DNA on it, which it did. But it's odd. He talks about this rifle in a way that is so strange in these text messages to the roommate. He says his dad's going to kill him if he doesn't bring back the rifle. It was a gift to him, his grandpa's old rifle, a new gift to him. And he even texts the roommate and says, judging from today, I'd say grandpa's gun does just fine. I don't know. So you can obviously see there, he's focusing on the fact that the shot killed Charlie Kirk. He also mentioned in these text messages to the roommate that his father was diehard MAGA. And it's odd. I mean, from somebody looking at these text messages, it was strange that he was kind of implicating himself with all these very specific facts right after the shooting. The roommate is not the only one that he texted. He told the roommate, delete all of this. We don't want this, going out to authorities. And so that's why he is also facing charges of tampering with witnesses or witness tampering, asking the roommate to delete all that. Obviously, authorities still had access. But in addition to the roommate, he also was on Discord. Now, Discord's where you can have these group chats. And so he was in this chat with about 20 people. And it seems, based on his conversation, that this was a chat he would engage in pretty often, like a group of people who would come and talk about X, Y, and Z. So in this chat around the same time, he's messaging them saying, hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this. He goes on to say, I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've been so amazing. Thank you all for everything. So they see that and they're thinking, wait, he didn't actually do this, right? Like, he didn't actually do this. He's joking, right? He's joking. So much so that one of the Discord chat friends comments back and says, whatever you do, don't go to a McDonald's anytime soon, referencing Luigi Mangione, who is the suspect for the United Healthcare CEO ambush, who was caught in a McDonald's. Responding to that, Tyler Robinson said, better also get rid of this manifesto and exact copy rifle I have lying around. So he's kind of making a joke, making light of the situation, but obviously is also implicating himself in saying, like, well, I have the gun and I did this and I wrote about this and I did this. It was all me. Not apologetic whatsoever for the actual shooting itself, but apologetic to seemingly everybody else he was telling about it, the Discord friends and his roommate, the person that he was dating. Tyler Robinson did appear virtually in court this week, didn't say much. We really learned most of our information from that county attorney presser that really revealed so much. But I do want to bring in one of our live interviews, and we do have people watching live. So if you have questions, please post to YouTube or Facebook so we can answer them for you. I want to bring in former FBI Special Agent Ken Williams. Ken, I know you and I have had some conversation back and forth over the years due to just different cases, but I just want to give people a little bit of your background and why I wanted to reach out to you about this. You've been 30 years with the Bureau. You were heavily involved in the Oklahoma City bombing. I got to know who you are because you wrote the Phoenix Memo, which became very famous during and after 9/11. The Phoenix Memo being about that there were students from the Middle East coming here and learning how to fly, but not learning how to land. Something you sent the FBI headquarters, 2 months before 9/11 happened? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
July 10th, 2001.
July 10th, 2001. And that's obviously become a huge debate, discussion over these past years as to, had they acted more on that, would 9/11 have been prevented or had been changed? So that's where a lot of people may recognize you and your name over these years because of your work on that. So when we're talking the FBI involved in this case, I thought who better to go to than Ken to answer some of the questions I have and maybe a lot of the questions that so many of our viewers have as we've watched this unfold. Ken, I want to start with this. That county attorney presser was interesting to me. And it was interesting to a lot of people because we got so much detail. But that's the part that was interesting to me. To reveal all of those text messages, the ins and outs of every little detail, that is typically not something we get until trial. Do you think there was a strategy as to why they revealed so many intricate details in this case before that?
Well, I don't know if there was a particular strategy, but I was very impressed with Attorney Jeff Gray's release of the information, the charges, and the evidence supporting the individual charges. In 30 years plus of law enforcement, because before I was with the FBI, I was with the San Diego Police Department, California, I've never seen a county attorney or a U.S. attorney outlay a case so succinctly, so professionally. I think it could have been done for many reasons. I think this is just my professional opinion, maybe to prevent the spread of conspiracy theories right up front, maybe, you know, get the information, get the facts out there, say we got this under control. I think it was also a very good example of the surge that law enforcement, both federal, state, and county and local, brought upon the case to get all that information in as fast a manner as we did. I mean, the evidence against this young man is tremendous, you know, and that doesn't mitigate the fact that he could have other charges coming against him from the federal government down the road under domestic terrorism charges.
Right, right. Something that's odd, and you mentioned conspiracy theories. One of the things I've seen online is people suspicious of the fact that he wrote so much in such a short amount of time after Charlie was killed in these text messages like, I did this, here's why I did it, here's when I planned it, my dad is diehard MAGA, here's where I left the rifle, like all of these things. Some people have gone the conspiracy theory route on that. From your perspective, why would somebody reveal those things in writing to somebody close to them? Do you think that there's a certain kind of mindset that he was going through at the time?
Well, I'm certainly not in the individual's mind. He's obviously got a sick mind, but I mean, anything's open right now. I mean, what the FBI is doing right now, in conjunction with our state and local counterparts, is doing some digital forensics on the computer systems, his cell phone, his laptop computers, his gaming systems. You know, we're going to be looking at at the social communication app Discord, everything that he's done on that. We're going to try to identify everybody, and I mean everybody, that he's been in contact with via these devices. And the FBI has some very unique tools that we bring to this, and we will be thorough. We will leave no stone unturned, and we will go out and actually talk. I'm not saying just the FBI, but our law enforcement partners with us, to every single person that he's been in touch with and organization. You know, my primary area of expertise with the bureau was international terrorism, groups like Hamas, Al Qaeda, Al Qaeda Islamiyah, stuff like that. But what we saw was a lot of youth back in those days, before 9/11, and even to the current day, would get radicalized online by looking at certain websites. So the FBI is going to spend some time looking at his social media footprint to see if he was on any websites that espoused this leftist, fascist, anti-fascist, anti-MAGA, anti-gay, transgender ideologies, to see if maybe he was being somebody was fueling the fire. So I know that's a fact. We'll be doing that. We're very good at that, and we'll get answers to that.
Yeah, something that you highlighted was just how fast we learn everything, but just the FBI's role in the digital forensics, the resources. It can take sometimes months in a case to get forensics back. When the president of the United States is heavily involved like this, where he's saying, we got to get him, we got to do this. What happens behind the scenes with the FBI? Is that like a all hands on deck, no matter where you are, get on this investigation now, and let's kind of throw most of our resources this way?
Yes, I believe the Director Patel did a great job in surging the resources of the FBI to assist state and local agencies. I mean, this is definitely a very unique situation, given the fact of who Mr. Kirk was, his relationship to the president, the vice president, and those within the Republican Party, the MAGA community. So obviously, that did get some juice, But it is all hands on deck. I have my contacts within the bureau still, and they said, they have. These are younger guys. I was around for a long time, and they said they hadn't seen it, quite frankly, in their career, the speed at which they were, moving on this case to solve it. So, but I think that in the future, going forth, we would see the current director move as fast on other matters as well. It wouldn't have to be a prominent individual like Mr. Kirk. And I want to say my thoughts and condolences go out to the Kirk family. I pray for them right now. These are very difficult times for them, and I can't even imagine what they're going through. So I just want them to know, if they're watching it, that people like myself are thinking of them and praying for them.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, especially, all over the country, but here in Arizona too, people knew the Kirk family, and personally knew the Kirk family. So I know a lot of people are grieving that loss, and understandably so. I want to ask you, this is something, and I'm sure you've seen this evolve over the course of your career, but there was some criticism of the FBI at first with what Kash Patel was putting out on Twitter versus what was going on then behind the scenes. And then like having somebody and then not having somebody in custody, it's the wrong person twice. What do you make of that in terms of getting information out to the public? But is it like a, we want to be out there quickly, but versus correct? That's
Well,
tough.
in my opinion, Brianna, I mean, I think we have to be very measured before we make statements like that. We have to make sure we have our ducks in the row, that we're not giving the public misleading information.
Yeah.
I mean, let the investigation unfold. They always do, and it'll take a lot of tips and turns before you get to the answer. I still have questions about that whole sequence of events at the crime scene, and this is where I'm, again, looking at from a possible organizational involvement with this, like some leftist group or whatever, like armed queers in Utah or Antifa. Like were some of these, the guy who admitted responsibility right off the bat, was he
Yeah.
part of something? Were the question askers about, who, how many transgender shooters have there been just before Mr. Kirk got killed? I mean, was that also something going on there? I don't believe in coincidences, but until we got to look at all those facts. We got to go through all those people, those people in particular that asked the question about transgender shooting, and then the guy who wanted to turn himself over and said he did it. Are they part of something, or was it a coincidence? And was the man who surrendered and said he did it just a nut job? I
Yeah.
do know from other cases that I've worked. I mean, there's a term for it. I'm not a psychologist or a doctor, but I did run into this in at least one occasion in the Oklahoma City bombing case, actually, where somebody in Kingman actually said that they were involved in it when they had nothing to do with it at all. And it was just a person with a mental problem. But we have to investigate it all before,
Right.
in my opinion, we might make any public announcements.
Yeah, I mean, so many people have brought up that same point. The question that was asked right before is such odd timing. Clearly, there's still more of this investigation to be done. Just because Tyler Robinson's in custody doesn't mean it's over. Ken, I want to take some social comments, questions while you're on with us, in case there's anything
Sure.
that you can answer. Let's see. We have. It feels weird to me. The roommate, a girlfriend, had no idea about this. That's from my sister. Thank you, Alyssa. Ken, that is a good point though, and I do want to ask you that the roommate does play an odd part in this case because the roommate is the one that had all those damning text messages. Um, but was there? I mean, are they going to fully investigate the roommate to the fullest extent on this?
Absolutely, and if I would suggest to you that they probably already have, and that his cooperation is not a willing cooperation, so to speak, as much as he's they're going to go easy on him and with criminal charges. I mean, my understanding is that this his boyfriend Robinson, called him, contacted him shortly after, messaged him shortly after the murder, and was asking him to delete certain things from the digital things, and to not talk to police.
Yeah.
So therefore he was charged with obstruction of justice. But in doing so, though, Mr. Twig should have picked up the phone and called the police and said, "Hey, look, and I'm living with a guy who just told me he killed Mr. Kirk." I mean, in not doing so, that's a crime. So I would suspect, without having that inside knowledge, that that's what they're holding over his head. You either cooperate with us, or we're going to come hard on you for misprision of felony, or being an accessory after the fact, and charge him hard.
Yeah.
So, but I certainly think they're going to go through him very, very much so. I think they're both going to look at, or the FBI is going to look at both their social media platform, their footprint. If they were on any of these pro gay transgender site that expose a violent outlook on things. Not that there's wrong with any people wanting to live that type of lifestyle, but if they're being radicalized to take action, violent action, to oppose those who oppose them, then that becomes a domestic terrorism investigation.
And that's when you say
And
there'd
then
be
the
more
FBI is going
charges.
on a whole different. The FBI is moving in a whole different direction. You know, and I can see it's going to take the Department of Justice working with the Utah County Attorney's Office to figure out the prosecutorial stages of this thing. Uh, Obviously, the state's got their ducks in a row right now, moving forward on state charges. I'm sure the federal government and Attorney General Bondi, working with Director Patel, is putting together a federal case as well.
Yeah. Ken, we're looking at some comments on here that are popping up. Some people saying so heartbreaking for many, even the killer's parents who had to make
Oh
the
yeah.
choice to turn him in. I mean, I think a lot of people commending the parents, but then we also had other people who were talking about um, the fact that there are a large chunk of people condoning the violence because
Yeah.
of their viewpoints. What do you make of the aftermath of the fact that you've got the parents who did the right thing, an unimaginable position for them to be in, but you have people so split on saying, depending on how they felt about Charlie personally, did you expect that kind of rhetoric online in the aftermath here?
No, I didn't. I didn't. But one side of me, I didn't expect to see it. I've thought about it in the past because I know, he. You could see it. You can sense that he was rubbing a certain segment of society the wrong way. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I don't agree with the reaction to this. I mean, Mr. Kirk's message was spot on. He gave people a platform that disagreed with him to talk with him. I mean, and I mean, God, to take a guy out for allowing them to have their peace is just sick. I mean, we're a country that's in a world of hurt right now, in my humble opinion, Brianna. And I don't know how we correct it, but I mean, it's just like. In my field, when I was working the Islamic extremists, you get youthful people watching stuff online, and their heads are getting filled with hatred from these extremist Muslims from the Middle East, and then they perhaps have never been to the Middle East a day in their life, and maybe just converted to Islam. They know nothing about the true nature of a peaceful religion of Islam, right? And then they go out and they're wanting to blow things up. So I think the same thing applies here. You get young people that do nothing but sit behind a computer screen or a device and just suck this stuff in, and then they end up spewing hatred, and then in this case actually going out and killing a person.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you stop that. That's I don't know if that's got to be legislated by Congress. What can be posted online? I know there's a whole free speech issues and stuff, but something needs to be done.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. Ken, I wanted to take one more question for you. As the investigation plays out, when could we see more evidence in the case? I agree with this question too, because do you think they're going to drop like little bits and pieces as they go, or can we not expect to see more until it would be, at trial when they would reveal these things?
Well, I think County Attorney Gray made the comment that this is not going to be a case where he's going to be talking to the media every day about this or every other day.
Yeah.
He's laid down the foundation of his case, the charges. I think he did a masterful job explaining the evidence behind each charge that he filed against Mr. Robinson, and I think he's gonna hold the rest close to his vest. I mean, there's so much more that's got to be done in a traditional crime scene case like this. I mean, some of the things that we have to do. I mean, law enforcement, if they haven't done it, I'm sure they have. They were doing neighborhood investigations. They were going out and talking to everybody where this guy was seen on his way to the crime scene. They're going to go and ask people to give them the security video footage from their homes to get more than just that TMZ video that we saw on TV with him limping down the street. We're going to get, they're probably got a half dozen or more videos in their possession already of him going from where he parked his vehicle to the crime scene and then back away from it. The fingerprint evidence. I mean, our crime scene investigators were fingerprinting everything on the way up to that rooftop. If he was touching the railways, if he's touching the walls, if he's touching the ledges when he was getting off, you've got all sorts of stuff. You got the witness statements, obviously, and statements from the parents. You got the statements from Mr. Twig. They're going to go out and they're going to interview people that he's been interacting with online and seeing if somewhere down the road he hasn't talked about committing an act of violence. I know he told his boyfriend or his lover that he had only been thinking about doing this for about a week and planned it for a week. So now we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to go looking at video footage for at least a week or two before the murder,
Yeah.
and see if he was in the area casing the place and all that type of stuff. So the investigation is just started. I mean, now you got to make these charges that the county attorney filed against him stick, and then we also have to look at, from a Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Justice standpoint, build a domestic terrorism case against this guy, or at least have it ready to go. Whether or
Right.
not the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Attorney General of the United States is going to file on him, that's up to them. That's not the FBI's job. Our job is to go out there and collect the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, you listing it out right there just goes to show how extensive this investigation is, and the overwhelming evidence in the case. I mean, there's so much direct evidence, circumstantial, forensic, digital, like it's got it all, and that's so
You
much
know,
to go through.
and Brandy, you got to think he lived 266 miles away from the crime scene. So
Yeah.
agents and investigators are going to track all 266 miles. They're going to see where he stopped, if he stopped, did he meet with somebody along the way. You know, there's so much that goes into these investigations. But by the time this thing goes to trial, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of pages of uh, documentation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way these things go.
It's so extensive, and then not to mention a capital case, a death penalty case. Those in and of themselves are much bigger cases, take longer to play out in a courtroom too. Just to get there, it's typically years. Then you get to the case itself, and that can play out for months and months in a courtroom, which I assume something of this
Mhm.
magnitude would. Ken Williams, thank you so much for joining us live.
Thank
Your
you.
expertise, what you bring to this, it's really appreciated on my end, and I know that the live viewers here too. It's a case that a lot of people care about, and you make a good point as we talk about all of this. Obviously, we're keeping the Kirk family top of mind as this is a very devastating loss. So I just
Absolutely.
appreciate your time live, and we hope to have you on the show again soon.
Yes, please. I'd like to. And thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Ken. You too. Appreciate it so
Bye bye.
much. Thanks, everybody, for all your live questions as well and comments. Keep them coming because coming up next, I think it's the case that honestly more people want to talk about than anything. Luigi Mangione, the suspect accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He was back in court this week. We've got new videos and new pictures of the suspect that people either hate or love. We're going to talk about these charges, what they mean, charges he got dropped. Stick around. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll probably see us behind the scenes here for about a minute. If you're watching on Roku, you'll see some ads here. So we'll be right back. See you in a sec.